Have you ever spent perhaps an excessive amount of time working on your hair, working on that little strand that just won't come down? And then you go out and you realize that nobody notices. In fact, every single person is so concerned about their own hairdo or their own outfit or their own insecurities that nobody ever looks twice at your hair or your outfit. They simply just don't notice. And the same thing is true when you're speaking, oftentimes when you're writing. In almost any interaction you have, you are comparing your subjective experience to all of the things that are going on in your mind, all of the things that you didn't say, all of the thoughts that you had but didn't express, all of the guesses at how the other person is interpreting it. Meanwhile, the other person is thinking exactly the same thing. And so we've all had this experience, right, of walking away from something and going, oh my God, does this person hate me? Should I apologize? Whatever. And finally you work up the courage maybe months later to say, hey, I'm really so sorry about that thing. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I feel so badly. And they go, what thing? And we've heard this intellectually, this academic concept of the spotlight effect, or that we think that everybody is looking at us. But even if everyone is looking at us, and this is the case with celebrities, for example, they will not think of that moment for longer than 5 seconds after it happens. Because not only is there so much else going on in the world, but there's so much going on inside of their individual world. So the other day I was talking to the girl that I'm currently seeing, and she asks some pretty excellent questions that make me really think about the origin of some of the things that I believe or some of the ways that I behave. But she asked me, don't you ever get embarrassed? And I was like, not really. Unless I do something that I feel badly about, in which case I try to correct it immediately, I tend not to feel embarrassed in perhaps some of the cases where other people would feel embarrassed. And that's quite intentional. That's something that I've worked toward. So when I was younger, as I mentioned, I'd be embarrassed about all sorts of stuff. But I hated the feeling of embarrassment so much. I detested it so much that I actually reoriented my thinking so that I wouldn't experience it except for the most extraordinary cases in which I probably should be experiencing. So I asked her, what is embarrassment really? It is a fear of what other people are going to think. The classic example I give, and it's the one that really resonated with me and I think influenced my behavior in this particular arena, is approaching girls that I liked. As I've mentioned, I'm a romantic and I am a perfectionist in many ways. And so whenever it came to approaching a girl that I liked, I imagined that it had to go a particular way and that failure was not an option, that I had to control the outcome. And so a lot of time in those sorts of situations, the way you control the outcome is by avoiding the possibility of failure by not even making the attempt. Now, let's say that's one reason why you don't go for something. Another reason is because you are concerned about what other people are going to think. So in the case of approaching the girl, it would be, man, I really don't want everyone to see me trying this thing and getting rejected, because then I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to feel that everyone is going to think, oh wow, what a loser, this guy got rejected. But then I thought, wait a minute, every time that I've seen one of my friends approach a girl, regardless of how it goes, I'm proud of them. Even if we make fun of our friends for attempting something and looking silly or foolish, we still respect and admire the fact that they had the courage and the bravery to put themselves out there. And this applies to all sorts of different things. When somebody goes up for a talent show, or when someone steps up to take a penalty kick in a game, or when somebody just tries something for the first time in a public arena, we can laugh at them, but really, what are we laughing at? They were the ones that were brave enough to attempt something at the risk of appearing foolish or inexperienced or failing. And so I realized what I was afraid of was people thinking that I was a coward. And more than people thinking that I was a coward, I was afraid to feel a coward myself. I was afraid to feel that I had avoided something because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, or that I wasn't going to be successful, or that there were other people around. And so I increasingly endeavored never to feel that way again. And so when I had an outlandish idea, the more that it would frighten me or would seem far out there or get my heart pumping, I would actually be more inclined to do it. Because much more than the fear of making a public spectacle of myself would be the shame of not having gone for it and not having attempted the thing because I was afraid of how it would turn out. And honestly, this has been tremendously helpful in all parts of my life. And I think a large part of it I owe to my father's rearing of myself and my siblings, which is that if we are true to ourselves and we are acting in accordance with good morals and good intention, if someone has a problem with that or makes fun of that or tries to belittle who we are, the problem in those cases isn't with us. The problem is with them. Now, that's not to say that there are no cases in which we should ever be embarrassed or we should ever care what other people think. In fact, that is an important part of having a robust moral compass, is knowing when you've done something wrong. And in those cases, you should feel embarrassment or shame. For example, if you yell at your parents in public, or if you snap at your significant other, or if you betray your friend in one way in a game or something. But I've seen in so many instances, friends that put themselves out there, or my parents that experimented something new at their business that had high risk failure or little chance of success. And these are the things that really inspire and motivate me to emulate them. So whenever I saw my dad making a joke to somebody, the worry wouldn't be if the person would understand the joke or not, because he knew that at the end of the day, everybody wants and craves that human connection, and that they appreciate that you are treating them as a human being rather than perhaps just a waiter. And I would see how appreciative these people would be of my dad's human connection and his lack of fear when it came to their response, or what me or my siblings or my mom or anyone with us would say if the person that he was teasing, for example, wouldn't reciprocate in a similar manner. And if you think about the people in your life that are successful in their different endeavors, whether it's personal or social or professional, these are the people that approach things with an open heart, an open mind, and a smile. And regardless of what happens, the only thing that they're in control of is how they behave and their inputs. And so ultimately, if it is the input and the intent that you focus on, rather than the potential outcome or consequence, if you live a life that is directed around virtuous principles and a strong character, then you don't need to be worried about what other people think of you. Certain people will always misunderstand what it is that you're trying to do or trying to communicate. And the sooner that we accept that not everybody is going to see things exactly the way that we do, but we understand that in such cases, we can communicate and clear up any misunderstanding, then we need not worry about how what we say or don't say might come across. And in the cases that we do falter or fail or fall short of our own expectations and our own standards of ourselves, as long as we own it and are vocal about it and communicative of it, we need not feel permanent shame or embarrassment about the matter. I think another issue arises is when that embarrassment or shame leads us to deny or lie to cover up something that we've done. And for that reason, I think that honesty can never be overrated enough. It's not a cliche to say the truth sets you free, because then you don't have to worry about hiding or covering any part of yourself. You can be true to who you are and trust that the people that are operating in good faith and the people that care about you are always going to take you at your word and try to understand where it is that you're coming from. And if they're not operating in good faith and they try to tear you down or say that what you do or what you think or what you act is wrong or immoral, then perhaps those aren't the people that you should be hanging out with. But you certainly don't want to lead a life where you need to hide who it is that you are especially if you have confidence that you're operating according to a moral code. And you will naturally find the people that resonate with what it is that you believe and what it is that you stand for. People are embarrassed and feel shame at all sorts of things that they shouldn't. The original purpose of public embarrassment was to avoid being an outcast, because then you'd be left by the tribe because you're behaving in some way that was outside of the norm. But this has become so perverted that we behave in ways that are actually pretty strange given the context. We go to clubs and don't dance because we're worried about the way that people are going to think of us. If we're really worried about the way that people are thinking of us in those cases, then honestly, we should be dancing. Because I find it very strange to go to a place that is explicitly for dancing and for losing yourself in the collective, that has loud music and crazy lights and a very hot, crowded atmosphere, that you then try to behave as though you're at some sort of cafe where you should have a discussion with somebody. Doesn't really make any sense. Same thing when you're at a bar. We're afraid to talk to each other at a bar whose express purpose it is to meet other people. And the reason why the bar centers around alcohol is to release and let go of some of your inhibitions so that you can smile at someone and say, "Hi, I think you're pretty." Even if it's sort of awkward or whatever it is, it's to increase the amount of interactions that we have and reduce the fear. That's why they call it liquid courage. And we have perhaps become so unaccustomed to putting ourselves in situations that we don't have control over, or where somebody might not reciprocate our inputs, that we have encouraged a culture of drunkenness and escapism in order to talk to people that really we should be able to just say hello and start a conversation with. I would love to hear about your guys' most embarrassing moments. And in fact, the things that you thought would be embarrassing or that you were afraid to do, or the social situations in which you sought to avoid, and how they actually turned out very different. Because a lot of time it is the things that we are most afraid to do that give us the greatest confidence once we finally do them. Thanks for watching.